Welcome back to Hotties. I'm McKenna,
I'm Bree.
and today we're talking about chronic illness.
Audie
Hotties.
Hotties. Yeah, welcome to the Audie Hottie podcast.
Here we are. Today,
We're talking about our bodies and all the problems that they have. So here we
all the fun
go.
things. All the fun things.
The fun
So,
things.
any updates for this week?
Well, I was going to talk about people going too hard when they start back into summertime
Yeah.
because that's body related. But yeah, I made the mistake of doing a few too many things this week. I went on my first bike ride of the year, and then I went dancing, and then yesterday had a 5K. That was not well trained for. I spent like maybe, ran 1 mile beforehand.
Summered a little too close to the sun.
Yeah, yeah, but it was a fundraiser for the Humane Society.
That's
So
right, the
we just
doggy dash.
the doggy dash. Yep, we just went and walked that one. So
Very
yeah,
fun.
my little dog is almost 12 years old, so
She's
we kind of
quirky.
run based on what she wants to do. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I love it.
we got to the end, and I was like, oh, this might be close to like one of your last runs. We'll see. We've been running 5Ks together for 10 years.
So
From like
sad.
the time she was 2 years old-ish to now. So
I feel like it's such a robbery, like pet ownership, because it's
mhm.
just like you only get them for so long. It's so sad.
Yeah,
And I mean,
well,
worth it.
and it's really sad right now too because I have two pets, but both of them are older. They're both like
Yeah.
1 year apart, and so they're like 12 and 11 this year.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, you guys can't go like at the same time. Like
Yeah.
that's gonna destroy me if you guys both go.
Please don't.
Yeah, yeah.
I know Frankie is like has white paw, like she's just starting to show white on her
Oh.
paws, and she already has white on her face. And I think it's stress related, to be honest. Like I don't
Mhm.
think it's genetic, and she's a little anxious ball, and
Yeah.
I just love her so much. She's turning 4 in a couple weeks, which I
Oh.
cannot wrap my mind around. Like she will forever be just like 2 in my brain forever, and I'm
Oh.
sure she's gonna act like it forever.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone keeps saying like when they're 5, when they're 6, they'll slow down, and I'm like, I don't think Homegirl's ever gonna slow down.
Jill still hasn't. Yeah.
Yeah. So
But yeah, so my body is like really angry at me.
is
And
it?
Lauren and I had also painted our whole bedroom the weekend before. And so that's a lot
Jeez
of like physical work
Louise.
too. And so Lauren keeps going, why do I hurt? I'm falling apart. I'm gonna die. And I'm like, you literally did this, 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 and this. So like you know why your body
She's like,
hurts.
oh.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm not dying.
I was so tired after dancing the other night.
Oh yeah.
I was just like, oh my God, I'm exhausted,
I
but
am
not
so
sore or
solidly
anything.
hitting the I'm in my 30s, and
Yeah.
staying out past like 9:30 is really late for me,
Yep.
which is kind of sad. But
Well, maybe we just have to work up to it this summer.
yeah, yeah, definitely
Maybe if we
ease into
want to.
things. As a physical therapist, we also see a lot of injuries at the beginning of summer when people start doing their weekend warrior shit and getting out there and doing things they shouldn't. Mm.
Too funny. So, we're going to talk about chronic illness because, as mentioned on when I was getting diagnosed with autism, ADHD, my doctor looked, or the psychiatrist looked at my medical history and goes, oh, you have a very autistic medical history. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of like bring that to the surface and also talk about a couple of factors that go into it and why it might be an autistic, like why autistic people might experience these more than
Mm.
others. But I was going to start off with asking you if you have any chronic illnesses.
Mm.
So I have several.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think your story might be a little more complex than mine because mine is pretty minimal. I'm pretty fortunate in that way, but I have had chronic joint pain my whole life.
Yeah.
Some of that was from ice skating. Like
Hmm.
I had two knee conditions as a kid that are both related to jumping and repetitive use
Okay.
injuries at Osgood-Schlatter's and patellofemoral syndrome.
Oh.
Um, so both knee problems, but I've had joint pain pretty much my whole life, and now, like being diagnosed, I've been able to see more patterns in that when I'm overstimulated or in burnout or any of those phases, my joint pain is so much worse. Like it's pretty much my whole body, my elbows, my wrists, my hands. I went and got tested for RA and
Yeah.
for rheumatoid and for osteoarthritis, and
Yeah.
both came up negative. Um,
Interesting.
but I think it's just the inflammation, and I think you'll get into a lot of that of where inflammation comes into our situations.
Hmm.
I'm also on kind of a journey to figure out if I'm hypermobile or
I
not.
was just gonna ask that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I would 100% like a year ago have been like, no, I'm like the tightest person on the planet. I've been like, I'm not
Hmm.
hypermobile at all. Like,
Right.
if anything, I can't like touch my toes half the time and that kind of
Sure.
thing. But I definitely have like double jointedness. I have
Yeah.
backwards elbows, the hitchhiker thumbs.
Yep. So
I've
you
got
are, yeah.
my 90-degree thumb,
Holy moly.
90-degree backwards thumb angle.
Way more than mine. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's the irony of hypermobility is you think that it's something that you mean that means that you're hyper flexible and that you're
Right.
not in any
Like
pain.
you're a rhythmic gymnast who can bend their legs over their head
Yeah.
and yeah.
And in reality, there is so much progression that goes with it that contributes to a lot of stiffness because of your muscles overcompensating for that joint weakness and
Hmm.
how your connective tissue functions and all of it. So I'd be
Yeah.
curious, like when you were saying that your joints flare up with this, I mean, yes, sounds like a little bit of inflammation, but also sounds like the progression of the hypermobility that I have.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and I definitely get it with my back, especially.
yeah,
I did have a back injury when I was in ice skating.
okay.
But I also have like a super excessive what's called a hinge. So it's like where one point in your back is a lot more mobile than the other points of your back.
Yeah.
And I've for years tried to deal with it through like all my physical therapist friends helping me and stuff like
Hmm.
that. But it's like when I bend, it's very much like a like one straight point instead of like my whole back bending together.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of pain with like standing for a long time. And
Okay.
that's one thing that originally made me go towards diagnosis in general too, is that like
Yeah.
especially museum walking is what I call it, when you're like slow walking, kind of like today when we were in line for coffee, where you're like walk, 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 stand, 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 walk, 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 stand, 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 and kind of like
Museum walking.
museum walking. Um, that usually gets me the worst, and it's like I would like
Huh.
go for like 20 minutes and then have to sit down, and I'd be like my 60-year-old mom is just like cruising through with no problem. Like, why am I having to like sit down and do stuff? But I think a lot of that is potentially from hypermobility of
Hmm.
like hanging on my ligaments when I'm
Yeah.
standing and um yeah, a lot of hip flexor tightness,
Yep.
which comes a lot of times with hypermobility and with just general body tightness
Yeah,
tension.
for sure.
Yeah.
No, all of those things I completely relate to. And I'm in physical therapy for like the back. What they say is that my glutes are too tight. So like that's what's holding all of the tension in my back just because of like the
Mm,
connection or what is that called when it's like not the pain of the muscle, but residual
a
pain?
radiating pain.
Radiating pain.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then also like pelvic floor stuff, which is pretty
Mm.
common for hypermobility, actually, which is
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for people who don't know much about pelvic floor stuff, there's
Yeah.
more than just like incontinence or
Yeah.
pain. Like there can be a lot of other dysfunction in
Yeah.
between, and it's not just fixing it with Kegels.
No,
So if you
it's
have pelvic floor
not.
problems, go to a pelvic floor physical therapist. If you didn't know they exist, there's people
Yeah.
that specialize in taking care of pelvic floors for both female and male anatomy people.
Hmm.
So.
Yeah, I mean, we do during my sessions for both my backs, both of them.
Both your backs.
And my pelvic floor is just releasing and then coordinating different muscle groups. So,
Yeah, mine was
yeah,
very
mine's just
much,
so tight.
yeah, I'm kind of like the opposite of you. I have really tight hip flexors and then my
Hmm.
glutes don't activate very much. It's
Yeah,
like when I'm trying to do bridges or hip
yeah,
thrusts, that kind of thing at the gym,
yeah.
it's like all back muscles trying to do the work
Oh,
and my booty can't get into it
interesting.
at all.
Booty, booty, what
Booty,
you
booty.
doing?
So mine was about activating and learning how to
Yeah.
use my glutes and my
Hmm.
core to counteract the
Yes.
hip flexors.
I
Yeah.
think for me, it's for sure my core. And I
Mm.
think I'm going to graduate to Pilates. Like, I
Oh,
think
nice.
I'm done with physical therapy for now, and I'm going to make the move to Pilates because I think I'm just ready for that next step.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm excited
Yeah.
to see how it goes. One thing about Pilates that I really love is that it was actually designed for folks with disabilities,
Mm.
particularly for POTS patients. It works super well because of it being like an horizontal versus a vertical exercise.
Yeah.
So,
Very cool. Yeah, I didn't know that background on
yeah, it's on TikTok. I don't know if it's actually true.
it. Fact check.
Any other
Um,
stuff that you deal with?
Pretty much my only other things are I've talked about before my urticaria.
Yes.
Um, and I have sports-induced asthma, but now I believe that it is actually the urticaria
Yeah.
involved.
Hmm.
So I only get the asthma when I'm working really hard at something. So physical activity.
Yeah.
I started getting it when I was young, when I was in ice skating. Um, but urticaria is basically it's an allergy to something environmental or another thing that's internal. It's basically covering any allergies that are weird.
Yeah.
Like not the expected allergies. So
Right.
mine flare up to heat and cold.
Right.
In the heat, I get hives. And I think it's actually vibration and heat do the same thing for me. So like
Hmm.
sometimes running will set it off too, where my skin is kind of vibrating. And also like massage guns vibrating.
Oh,
It
yes.
makes me itchy and hivey like
Yep.
really fast.
So interesting.
Yeah. And then in the cold, I get migraines if I
Hmm.
get anywhere close to like my ears getting cold. And that can even happen in like 50, 60-degree weather if there's a cool
Yeah.
breeze or something in the environment like triggers that.
Yeah.
I can manage them really well if I avoid those
Good.
things. And also with allergy medication just
Yeah.
as needed. I don't have to do every day,
Yeah.
luckily. But yeah, I think the asthma is potentially that inflammation happening
Yeah.
where the hives and everything happen, and then that inflaming in the lungs too. I haven't done
Hmm.
a lot of research on it, but it almost always is at the same time as the other things happening.
Hmm.
And my asthma also only like minorly responds to an inhaler.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, potentially that. But
Also
yeah.
sounds like my MCAS.
Oh.
Like a lot of what you just said sounds like the reasoning behind me going for a diagnosis for MCAS.
Mm-hmm.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise I'm fortunate to be pretty healthy besides
Yeah.
in the brain, but I'm currently not on medication for anything. I've been researching for getting back on some mental health meds, but
Yeah. Mental health
mental
meds. I
health
like those.
meds. It's like I'm in that place where I like don't feel like I like need it, but I think it would maybe make my like anxiety day to day a little
Yeah.
better.
Maybe
So
guanfacine. I
yeah,
mean,
I've been researching it.
yeah, that's what I'm on, and I just feel like it just brings everything down.
Oh, I'd also heard about people using beta blockers,
Hmm.
propranolol, and stuff for anxiety and meltdowns.
Yeah.
So I was kind of debating that. And I was also debating maybe trying Vyvanse because I've
Hmm.
only tried Adderall for ADHD symptoms and was like, oh, maybe I'll try something else and see.
The extended release. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
I think Vyvanse is the extended release of Adderall.
Oh, okay.
And then there's Ritalin, and the extended release of Ritalin is Concerta. I was on Concerta for a while and then just realized that like the only reason why I was on it was because I wanted to mask my symptoms. And then I
Uh-oh.
just got to a point of like, I don't really want to. And like maybe I will go back on it one day, but for right now,
Yeah.
cruising.
Yeah.
My own little AudHD way.
Love it.
No, but for real, I just feel like I have been, especially over the last year, have had a lot of focus on my physical health
Mm.
because it has been so bad after grad school and a very traumatic breakup. Like,
Yeah, we talked about in that episode of grad school about how the
yeah.
stress from that environment and everything really kicked off the flares
It
for you.
really
Yeah.
did. I think it just kick-started a lot of understanding my worthiness too, of like,
Mhm.
oh, I can spend time kind of caring for myself in this way and healing myself and um actually being honest about what's going on in my body. Because I think for so long, I just didn't trust that anything was wrong, and I would kind of bring things up to doctors and was dismissed. And
Yeah, we get very gaslighted in our own experience and
well, and being a person in a fat body, like I'm dismissed left and
mm,
right and have been told by probably every single doctor I have except for my current one to lose weight and my symptoms will go away, which
Yeah.
is it just has never helped.
No, that's
And the more I have like learned about not only fat phobia, but just being in a fat body and like my fatness is likely a thing that has happened because of all of my cortisol, because of all of these other things going on in my body. Like my fatness did not cause the chronic illness. It
that's a
is
great
like a
outlook on it.
symptom of it. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and it's just been a really big journey trying to combat that and like honor where I'm at and know that like my experience is valid. And just because my doctor is like pushing against it doesn't mean that like what I'm saying is not true. So,
Yeah. Not to lessen that experience any because it's
yeah.
completely like kind of separate, but my experience too has been because I look very not like very fit, but like
Hmm.
I'm fairly muscular, like generally look like I should be healthy. I've gotten like almost the reverse of that where they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, nothing's wrong with you. Like
Yes.
look you look fine. Like
Exactly.
you don't need to do anything."
Right.
And then I get like the no help
Right.
too, and I'm like, "What?"
I don't know what that is. It's weird. But
Mhm.
no, that goes to show that like, I don't know, it doesn't really matter what kind of a body you're in. You just can be dismissed no matter what. So first I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's,
Mm.
and that came from a naturopath. And because Hashimoto's, it's something weird with your thyroid where it's an autoimmune disease and your body basically attacks your thyroid, which is responsible for a lot of hormone and a lot of yeah, hormone regulation and releasing in your body. And usually naturopaths will flag those numbers earlier than Western doctors.
Hmm.
Um, just like you can be exhibiting one symptom or so, look at those numbers, and then have an Hashimoto's diagnosis. And I have noticed very much in this year that it is definitely something that I struggle with, and we'll kind of get all into how these all interconnect. But that was my first thing that I got or was diagnosed with. Second thing I was diagnosed with was PCOS. Um, and that turned into endometriosis.
Which PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome,
Mhm.
right? Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and that showed up just I wasn't getting my periods regularly. That really started in graduate school.
Mhm.
And I ended up getting endometrius removed, like endometrial tissue, and also two cysts removed,
Wow.
kind of February after I graduated. And then was kind of all of the information about the hypermobility kind of started entering my brain. I just started learning about hypermobility and kind of talked to my doctor. We went through the screener and I like had all nine factors of
Definitely need to be more.
it.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'm probably hypermobile. And they were like, no, you are hypermobile. I was like,
Yeah.
okay. And then I was like, okay, well, we really want to go to physical therapy for it. Like, I think that that would be really helpful. And so went to a physical therapist, and homegirl started just flat out educating me on all sorts of things to do with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
Mm.
Because she was like, so many patients come through here with hypermobility and like haven't gotten the other diagnoses. Let's just kind of talk about it. And so from there, I
Mm.
was super educated on what the syndrome was, which does include POTS and MCAS as well. So POTS is
Postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome.
that's exactly what it is.
I can see you were like freezing
Yeah.
the acronym. Yeah.
I like to think of it as dysautonomia.
Yeah.
So it's basically like your body's entering fight or flight without like needing to.
Yeah, it's a dysautonomic disorder. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And that shows up all the time and has for my whole life. And I just have never had language to explain
Mm.
what was going on in my body. Or like, I never knew that like no one else was experiencing these different part
Yeah.
sensations or
Yeah,
different
because
parts.
we were talking about before this
Yeah.
how our poor interoception really
Mhm.
leads us to not getting diagnosed with anything,
Yes.
but also us being hypochondriacs
Yep.
because we're like, this feels weird, but I have no idea if anybody else is experiencing it. And also, I only know like the big things. We don't have the
Mhm.
language for all these smaller potential diagnoses. We have the like, do I have cancer? Do I
Honestly.
like, am I dying? What's going
Yeah.
on? Yeah.
No, it's so true. And it's just, it's funny. Just being in a body that has all these weird sensations and then
You don't know what it
being constantly
means.
like, is this normal? Is this not normal? Is this normal? Is this not normal?
Mhm.
And
Well, especially if you have family members and that's who you're going to go to and ask and say like, "Hey, I'm feeling this like weird thing." And if they're like, "No, that's totally normal. Everybody gets that."
yeah.
But not really everybody gets that. It's because we got a bunch of neurodiverse people telling each other it's all normal.
It's a conundrum, that's
Yeah.
for sure. Well,
Yeah.
then MCAS is the overproduct, like it's mast cell activation. So it's overproduction of mast cells, which are responses to allergens. So all in all, I think I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome because I have the trifecta of symptoms, and those are kind of that's what all went into this comment of, oh,
Mhm.
you have a very autistic medical history. So
Mhm.
interesting enough, there's a couple of things that I have seen just since that appointment, but also it makes a lot of sense. So because of being a high masker and high masking, that usually involves a lot of cortisol production and
Mhm.
being in a lot of stressful situations and kind of trying to understand how to mask at all times. So there's links to that being the reason why there's just more autoimmune diseases in AFAB people with autism. And then also the motherfucker gene. I don't actually know what it's called.
He said like MTFR or something like
Okay,
that.
yes, MTHFR gene, which I just called the motherfucker gene. But what it does is it doesn't convert folate. So it's something that happens in utero. I don't know if it's just not developed. People have linked it to like people that take folic acid versus folate during pregnancy, and like the folic acid doesn't have the methylated thing, so that's what contributes to this gene mutation.
Hmm.
It's really bizarre. I am not going to get genetic testing
Hmm.
for it, so I'll never know if I have it or not. However, people that have this gene do have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, have autism, so
Hmm.
likely there is it. And one of the ways to kind of combat is to take methylated, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Methionine, yeah, something
Methylated
good. Something like that.
folate.
Mm.
So it's B9. I've been taking a vitamin with it and have felt kind of better. I'm doing a lot of things to make me feel better though, so I don't really know
Yeah.
like what is happening, but
So that's always been a problem for me
yeah.
is being like, oh, do I need like this support or this support? And then trying them, and
Yeah.
I don't have enough interoception to know if it's making a difference or not.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yep. I cannot tell if I'm like, they're like, oh, when you eat this food, does it make you feel bad? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't, there's no patterns. I can't tell anything. And
I
it's
don't know.
constantly been a struggle for me of like being like, well, I don't want to put all this effort into taking all these, supplements or whatever
Yeah,
because I don't know if they're helping or not.
I
And
know.
like,
Well, and it takes so much time too
mhm.
to
And money.
really
I mean,
money for
mhm.
sure. I've started this new medication that I really think has changed my life. It's GLP-1,
Okay.
and a lot of people have been using it for weight loss, and it's kind of big in that community. However, that's not why I went on it. I heard a lot of rhetoric around it putting autoimmune disorders into remission. And so I was
Mm.
like, I'm gonna fucking try this. And so I'm on a low dose, and it's brought down my inflammation so much in the
Wow.
last 3 months. And I think it's just going to improve from here. But I finally feel like I have my life a little bit more in control, which is
That's
really
huge.
privileged. I don't think that a lot of people with autoimmune disorders and chronic illnesses get to kind of have that regift. And so it's been
Yeah.
pretty humbling
Wow.
to be able to be like, oh my gosh, I do have the energy to do things now. I think I was just talking to you about like
Mm.
last summer, I felt like I couldn't do anything and I was so low energy all the time. And I was in a lot of therapy to just kind of accept that that was my new normal. And I just, after this medication, I am feeling like, okay, like maybe I will be able to have more energy in the future. And I already do. So,
Mm.
yeah,
Great. That's
it
awesome.
is great. It is, I
And
love
going
it.
into summer round two, so.
I know. The
Mm.
perfect time of year. Yeah, so getting diagnosed with all those things. It has taken obviously a lot of time, a lot of patience, and then a lot of me being truthful with what my symptoms are rather than kind of
Mm.
gaslighting
Yeah.
myself,
Minimizing and
minimizing. I have kind of an interesting story that plays into that. I went skiing when I was in eighth grade and tore my ACL, like
mm.
full on, fell down the mountain, was tobogganed down because of the injury.
Oh.
And the person that I was traveling with happens to be like, he wasn't a doctor, but I think he made like tools to repair patella
Mm.
tendons or something. And so he took a look at my knee and was like, oh, you're fine. Like, you're not injured at all. And then
Oh.
for the next, like, I went to the doctor and they were like, well, does it hurt? And I was like, honestly, I think I'm okay.
Mm.
Totally
If you have a
gaslighting
full tear or
myself.
something, it doesn't hurt most of the times.
Well, that's the thing, and it just would come out of place. And I would tell the doctors, like, oh, it came out of place. And they were like, yeah, well, it's probably just lose some weight. You'll be
Uh,
fine. And I was in eighth grade, like
oh my gosh.
horrible. So it took a full year to like get an MRI and then get surgery. So I
Mm.
think from that experience and just like that was probably the height of my fat phobia from doctors of them just like I remember being pushed for Weight Watchers, like seeing a nutritionist, and like that was kind of the whole goal of navigating literally my tendon, not ligament,
Mm.
ligament being torn in my leg. So, from that experience as a young person, I think that I've always just minimize things in doctor's appointments and have always had that internalized shame of whatever's going on with me, it's my fault because I've clearly neglected my body and I'm
Mm.
lazy and all of these things that are not true. And I know that. Um, One of the things this past year with like kind of getting all of these diagnoses in a line or whatever, and I think just advice for anyone is to be completely honest with what you're feeling. And even if the doctor is not really listening to you or seems like they're kind of pushing something else, really just sticking hard to what you feel are happening in your body because you are the expert of your
Yeah.
body. And
I think coming in with a mindset of not, this is kind of weird, but it's probably nothing.
yeah,
Like, don't come in with that mindset. Come in with the mindset of like, this is happening and it's not normal for me, and I feel like something is wrong.
yeah,
Like coming in with that clear, like,
yeah,
this is what's happening.
absolutely.
Because I definitely do that where I'm like, it's probably nothing. Like, I
Right.
don't know. Like, am I crazy for thinking that? Like,
Yeah.
and I have to
So
shed that and
normal.
just say like, nope, this
Yeah.
is happening.
Yeah. And maybe even, I mean, I know people say not to do your own research, but I have felt that it's very helpful to pop on Reddit and see, if someone has had these symptoms, if it goes along with this diagnosis, and then not
Mhm.
necessarily telling the doctor, like, oh, I think I have this diagnosis, but being very clear on what my symptoms are, because I think that's also something with, the poor interoception, lack of language is more of like, okay, what am I experiencing? And let me get a list written down of the things I
Mhm.
I have experienced and going in
Write
with
them
that list
down.
is
Yeah.
huge.
Write them
Yeah.
down, make a schedule of whatever,
Yeah.
like if it's something that happens, on a cycle of some kind, or if
Hmm.
there's triggers, like, yeah, anything that you can make a pattern of beforehand.
Hmm.
And that's going to save you money too, because, going to the doctor is expensive. So if you can go in the first time with your habits and your tracking of whatever's happened, that's going to give them the information instead of being like, let's have one visit where they tell me to track it and figure
Yeah.
this out, and then another visit down the road to look at the
Sure.
results. And
Yeah,
yeah.
I know.
And that's true for PT too. Like if you're bringing it into a physical therapist, like if someone walked in with a list for me and was like, "This is what's happening," I'd be like, "Cool, okay, let me read through it, and now we can tell the story." And
Yeah.
doctors are short on time, so
Hmm.
anything we can do
They
to,
can be.
yeah,
Yeah. No, it's so true.
it's made a big difference for me too of going to alternative
Hmm.
doctors. Like I'm not quite woo woo enough for naturopath, but I did choose a functional medicine doctor this time as a
Hmm.
primary care. Um, and I've had better luck too with my gynecologists that
Hmm.
are also able to be primary cares for some
Yeah.
reason. I don't know if it's just a little bit
Interesting.
of alternative or like pro women
Maybe.
treatment, but like my
Yeah.
functional medicine doctor actually has spent a lot more time with me and like actually like sending me lots of ideas. She sends me like a long email afterwards of like, this is all the stuff we talked
Oh,
about
I
and like try
love
this and
that.
this, and yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I go back and forth between Western and naturopaths. And
Yeah.
I feel like both work for me, and it just kind of depends on the issue that I'm having. But I think I always lean back towards the naturopath and like really trusting my body to heal on its own because it has done such a great job in doing that. And I work with an acupuncturist weekly and do various kinds of massages that I think the embodiment is so much of the healing as well. And I don't know, I think also there's some psychosomatic stuff that go along with having autoimmune. And so doing therapy, I did the somatic equine therapy.
Mhm.
And yeah, just like really trying to tune into what's going on, I think is also part of it. Because I think there's so much neglect in even just being really bummed that your body's not working in the way that you want it to. And
Yeah.
yeah,
I
just
have
kind of loving it through.
yeah, I have a lot of shame around taking medications for
Hmm.
things. And like having the belief that I should be able to do something myself to fix it
Yeah,
or that kind of thing. But
huge.
especially right now with the financial state of the world and time and just like not I don't have the time to dedicate to like yeah if I did yoga regularly
Hmm.
and did all these regulating activities and did things that cost a lot of money but I really love to do like I think I would be a lot more regulated and less anxious, but part of why I'm looking at medication again right now is because I don't have the time or money or resources to explore all those options as often as I would need to.
Yeah.
So like kind of putting that shame aside of like, okay, the medication is here to help us in times that we can't do it ourselves, and that's okay. Like, or there's some things that literally do need it, like probably like the Hashimoto's and
Hmm.
things like that, where you need to have it. Your body literally can't do the thing.
Hmm.
So just kind of like trying to get rid of that shame around it, but still making that conscious decision of like, what can I do for myself versus get help with. And
Totally. Like, and I appreciate bringing shame, like the conversation of shame into it because really what we're looking for is tools to help us get through. And like a pill could be the exact same as yoga. And like there's like less time invested in the pill, but then there's like more embodiment invested in yoga. So it's really just like looking at your different tools and how you want to help heal yourself in a way is maybe what my brain is saying when
yeah,
looking at that.
but it's the thing that you're doing something about
Yeah,
healing. Yeah,
exactly.
whatever
And
that
taking
thing
those
is.
steps. And I will be the first to say that, like, I have had such a shaming experience with healing, especially just with navigating kind of all of the energy. What is the like the huge lack of energy and the lack of spoons that I had last year? I mean, I had to kind of start from ground zero in terms of figuring out what I needed to do to heal. And it started with resting a lot, like coming home from work and just resting the rest of the night, really minimizing my social interactions. And I think what was I was doing was healing autistic burnout at the same time as kind of like understanding more of my physical chronic illness. So,
Mhm.
and yeah, I mean, there's just lots of ways to go about it. And I think that I wonder if it's like what the shame is from. Like,
Mhm.
is it from not being able to be your best self, or is it not really accepting yourself fully for where you're at? I think that's a huge part of it. Maybe shame for regressing. I think that I fall into that and just, how could I be here? I was socializing and so bubbly a year ago. Like, what happened?
Mhm.
But yeah, I think a lot of like self-love has to do with it.
Yeah, definitely. And just like trying to do it for yourself, like putting that priority
Hmm.
first, being honest about it,
Yeah.
not being afraid to take it up with your doctor and start the process.
Hmm.
Yeah, getting past those first steps is huge.
It is
Yeah.
huge.
Because it can be really important. Like some of those things sound like, oh, well, I can live without doing that, or like I'll be okay, but the quality of life is poor, or it can add to your regressions if you don't have those diagnoses and,
Hmm.
medications to help or whatever.
Well, a perfect example of that is I don't eat gluten, eggs, or dairy right now. And that all came from allergies. It's such a complicated thing, but it's part of my Hashimoto's because basically when I have my food allergens, that's when my body starts attacking my thyroid. But it also starts the MCAS progression as well. So here we are,
Mhm.
and I'm on month 4 of not having these things. And I accidentally had some the other night and immediately got a sore throat, immediately was exhausted. And it was like, wow, I used to be really tired all the
You
time
used to
and
just live with it.
just live with it and get by and had no idea of like the way it would feel if I didn't have that. And
Yeah.
it's wild.
Well, and other has other big implications too, like especially with potential for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome,
Hmm.
that you need to know that kind of thing going into like if you have to have a surgery in the future, how is it going to affect your healing?
Hmm.
Like it affects a lot more than just, it affects day to day, but it also affects big decisions. And,
Hmm.
the more you don't know about yourself, the more risk and potential hard times you're putting yourself through.
Well, for
Mhm.
sure. There's so much
Yeah.
power and knowledge and knowing yourself and what to ask for. And
Yeah.
I think there's such a big lack of education around that sort of stuff, especially in the medical realm. And you really
Oh,
have to
yeah.
advocate for yourself and what you need. And
Hmm.
mm,
Yeah. Takes a lot of learning and a lot of work to get there.
it does.
So not to minimize the importance of starting, but also it's real hard.
And
Mm.
maintaining.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, because then once you're there, you got to think about your food and your supplements and your medications.
it's
Mm.
exhausting. And like, I think that I'm finally out of the woods of having to have kind of like constant care or like supported care. I am kind of graduating from therapy in the next month. I'm graduating from physical therapy to do more Pilates. So I feel like I've had so much hand holding in my healing in the last 7, 8 months. And like, I'm finally ready to kind of either drop some of those supports or like have new ones that take less time. So,
Yeah, let you fly
because
free.
yeah, finally. Well, I just again feel so lucky. I think that this medication has a lot to do with it, but
Yeah.
it takes the chronic illnesses are just nothing to fuck with. That's for sure.
Mm.
And another thing too is it ties along with the invisibility, but
Mhm.
the invisible disability, looking like a perfectly able-bodied human on the outside, but there's just a lot other stuff going on inside
Mhm.
that people need to advocate for. And it can be, tying in the demand of having to advocate for yourself and being perceived. And it just is kind of a constant fuckery, if I want to be honest.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Well, and I was listening to another AudHD content producer that they were talking about how there's also bias from families with kids more on the high needs end,
yes,
where they
there
also
are.
kind of judge our end as saying like,
Yes.
oh, your autism isn't enough because they can't see our challenges.
Yeah.
But we're also expected to function like a neurotypical person.
Hmm.
Like you said, that invisible, nobody can tell that we're struggling as much as we are, but like our struggles are different from people with higher support needs, but we still have a lot of internal struggles.
Yeah.
And we're expected to navigate this stuff alone, basically.
Yep.
There are less supports for people who have these minor problems, quote
Yeah.
unquote, compared to people who have bigger things going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll never make sense to me comparing. Like it just doesn't because
There's no comparison between, yeah,
there's no
needs and
comparison. And why do you need to feel validated after comparing yourself or your experience to my experience? Like, just
yeah,
be valid in your own experience for what you're going through. Like,
yeah. It's very much like the queer debates of like it doesn't affect you really. Like
what queer debates?
like you doing whatever you want to do in your life because it doesn't affect me.
Oh,
Kind of the same
yeah.
with our disability of like, oh, like me being disabled in my own way and having my support needs and stuff isn't taking away from
Yeah.
somebody having more support needs.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
It is just a really interesting thought pattern because I don't know. Like I think about other people, but I'm never just like, oh, I have it so much harder than them, or like
Yeah.
I can't stand that they're heteronormative.
But it's like, I mean, if somebody had stage 4 cancer versus stage 1 cancer, you're never gonna say like you're not sick enough. Like I'm sicker than you. So
I
like
know. I
why do we feel
know.
that way about a long-term illness? Like
I do. Cool.
so
Well,
yeah, we don't
here's the
really
healing.
yeah. Woohoo, figure it out.
Here's to starting running. I think I'm ready to start running.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
let's do it.
Our running club. Me, you, and Lauren.
Yeah, sounds good.
We'll start with 2 minutes on, 1 minute off.
Or even less.
Perfect.
Sometimes I do
My
1-on-1.
kind of thing to join. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a complicated process. If you need supports, if you don't have family to support you, then reach out to your friends. And I don't know, I know a lot of people who are going through things who don't really talk about it with other people around them. I think it just should be a more open conversation. Like, I want to be there
Yeah.
for any of my friends going through anything. Like, if you're going for a stressful test or, like you're just unsure about something,
Yeah.
or I don't know, reach out to your friends. We love each other.
Absolutely. And I know that love each other. There's a lot of online communities, maybe even meetup groups of
Mm.
folks with disabilities. I think leaning on community is huge and helps you feel a lot less alone. All right. Well, until next time,
Next time,
find your joy
be unapologetically you.
and stay well. You deserve to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks for joining us this week. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Music.
Please like, subscribe, and leave us a review. We could use some of those. If you want to get pictures that go along with our episodes and follow along, join us on Instagram and TikTok.
Thanks,
Thanks, hotties.
hotties.